Have you ever felt like you don't belong in your family, in your friend group, in school, at work, anywhere? Or have you ever really wanted to belong and yet struggled to figure that out? We live in this very connected world, and yet there's something about it where we sit behind our screens and can feel so disconnected, like we don't belong. We see pictures of people's lives, and it looks like they have figured it out, and here we are struggling internally with how do I not feel this way? How do I not belong? I want to belong. Have you ever had those moments and thought, okay, how do I figure this out? How can I get there? How can I find some peace? How do I know when? And how do I find how I belong in this world? And it's kind of important for us to get some definitions. And the researcher, Brene Brown, gives us a help in this, especially in her book, Daring Greatly. And she says, connection along with love and belonging, two expressions of connection, so that love and belonging are expressions of connection, is why we are here. And it is what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. All of us want to belong. And that sense, it gives us purpose and meaning. And when we don't feel like we belong, we struggle with our purpose and meaning. And yet, how do we begin to figure this out? So one of the things that she gets into with this okay, so what does it mean then to belong? And she says, she gives this definition: the innate human desire to be part of something larger than us. That desire to be something larger than ourselves. And then she gives something really important for us to think about of what gets in the way of us feeling like we belong. And she identifies it at one of the things as fitting in. We try to fit in. Fitting in and belonging are not the same things. And so she says, fitting in is one of the greatest barriers to belonging. Fitting in is about assessing a situation and becoming who you need to be in order to be accepted. Belonging, on the other hand, doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. So when we're trying to figure out how we belong, we have to ask those questions about, well, who am I? And here's something kind of interesting. It becomes connected to our gifts and abilities. And if you think that you don't have gifts and abilities, that is absolutely not true. All of us have been given gifts and abilities. Maybe we may think it's insignificant, but it's not. In fact, Romans 12, 5-7 gives us a sense of how our belonging and our gifts are connected. It says, in the same way, though there are many of us, we are one body in Christ, and individually we belong to each other. We have different gifts that are consistent with God's grace that has been given to us. If your gift is prophecy, you should prophesy in proportion to your faith. If your gift is service, devote yourself to serving. If your gift is teaching, devote yourself to teaching. All of us have been given gifts and abilities, and they are a wide range. And it's not just one. We've been given multiple gifts and abilities. And so to become self-aware, what are the gifts and abilities that we have? But Romans also gives us another indication, which actually ties to what Brene Brown was saying, that we want to be, belonging is knowing that we are part of something much larger. Well, that happens with Romans when we go, what are my gifts and abilities, and how am I using them for others? How do I help others with my gifts and abilities? That they're not just for us to keep and hold on to for only ourselves to use, but instead, whatever gift and ability we have, we are to share it with one another, because that shows that we belong to each other. So this is like a two-step thing. If you're struggling with belonging, step one is to identify those gifts and abilities, even if it's the smallest thing, like you have a great smile and you are able to warm people's hearts, or you're a good listener and so you can sit quietly, or you have a discerning mind. Whatever that gift and ability is that you have, that we identify it as step one. And then step two is to begin to search out, to seek how we can use that gift and ability to help someone else. Not for us to hold on to, but actually to share it. And so those two steps, as we begin to work those two steps, we begin to find new ways of how we belong with our unique, individual, wonderful gifts that help others. Now, there are going to be times where we're still going to struggle, or maybe we tried and we feel like we failed. And so what happens then? And Psalm 100 actually gives us a really good sense of how that works. When it says in verses 3-4, know that the Lord is God. He made us. We belong to him. We are his people. The sheep of his own pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving. Enter his courtyards with praise. Thank him. Bless his name. We belong to God. We are created out of love, because God is love, for peace and joy in this world. And that as we remind ourselves of that, we are able then to celebrate. We are able to celebrate that we belong to God, that when we think we don't belong anywhere else, we belong to God who created us for peace and joy. So if you're like, man, I don't know what my purpose is, think about, okay, how can I cultivate some peace today? How can I cultivate some joy? What are the things that you can do with your particular gifts and abilities that you have to create peace and joy for yourself and for anyone around you, anyone that you come in contact with? And then we are able to celebrate that as we recognize and live into, we get to celebrate and be full of that joy. So my hope is that as you try to figure out how do you belong in this world, that you won't get caught up on the hamster wheel of trying to fit in, but recognize that your unique gifts and abilities that were given to you by a God out of love for peace and joy actually help you understand where and how you belong in this world as you share those gifts and abilities with others. May you have a wonderful day.